President Trump has a request for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu regarding the peace process in the Middle East.
As far as settlements, I'd like to see you hold back on settlements for a little bit. We'll work something out, but I would like to see a deal be made. I think a deal will be made. I know that every president would like to. Most of them have not started till late because they never thought it was possible.
This was the Prime Minister's first visit to the White House since President Trump took office. The president also signaled a departure from U.S. policy toward peace, saying a two-state solution wasn't the only option on the table.
I'm looking at two-state and one-state, and I like the one that both parties like. I'm very happy with the one that both parties like. I can live with either one. I thought for a while the two-state looked like it may be the easier of the two. But honestly, if Bibi and if the Palestinians, if Israel and the Palestinians are happy, I'm happy with the one they like the best.
Ambassador Dani Dayan is Consul General of Israel in New York, and he is here with me on set. Ambassador, welcome.
Good evening, Len. Thank you for having me.
Let me begin by asking you if a pause on settlement construction is a non-starter for your government.
I think that as a result of what we heard today and the talk in the Oval Office today, teams of both countries will sit down and speak about the details. I'm quite confident that an accommodation that will satisfy both sides will be reached.
So in 2009, when President Obama asked for a halt on West Bank settlement building, Prime Minister Netanyahu reportedly told his cabinet the demand for a total stop to building is not something that can be justified. So if there's a willingness now, there wasn't then. What changed?
Actually, it was a great willingness then. I want to remind you, Elaine, that Israel froze construction completely for 10 months in Judea and Samaria. And nevertheless, the Palestinians didn't come to the negotiating table. So I don't think that the same style or the same language that President Obama used in that respect is the language we heard from President Trump. And that's what gives me the optimism that with sincere talks between professional teams of both sides, a good accommodation can be reached.
We heard the president there talking about his view on the two-state solution. But what is your government's understanding now of the White House's position on this?
Look, I think it's a very positive development. The fact that for the first time an American president says, look, we tried and we failed. Let's think about innovative ideas. Let's search venues and paths that we didn't search yet. That is a very good thing. I think that it was expressed very clearly by Prime Minister Netanyahu in that very same press conference when he welcomed the search for new ideas. We are in a deadlock when the two-state solution was the only game in town that didn't help to break that deadlock. Maybe alternative ideas will.
So let me read you a quote from the head of Israel's right-wing Jewish Home Party. The understanding of President Trump's remarks as a rejection of the two-state solution. He wrote, quote, no need for a third Palestinian state beyond Jordan and Gaza, big day for Israelis and reasonable Arabs.
Well, I wouldn't put those words into President Trump's mouth because that is not exactly what he did. He said explicitly that the two-state solution, in his view, is one of the options, but differing from previous administrations and Europeans, he didn't say it's the only option. And we welcome very much that statement by the president. I think it's a good understanding of the situation.
All right. I'd like to ask you about the president's response to a question from an Israeli reporter about incidents of anti-Semitism reported in the U.S. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
What do you say to those among the Jewish community in the States and in Israel and maybe around the world who believe and feel that your administration is playing with xenophobia and maybe racist tones?
Well, I just want to say that we are, very honored by the victory that we had, 306 electoral college votes. We are going to do everything within our power to stop long simmering racism and every other thing that's going on, because a lot of bad things have been taking place over a long period of time.
Mr. Ambassador, what's your reaction?
Well, I think that the president said explicitly that they will make efforts to stop a simmering of racism and including, obviously, anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism exists. exists in Europe, exists in this country, and it should be stopped. But I don't think that it should be blamed in any way on the shoulders of the administration, like as also Prime Minister Netanyahu said. We have to fight anti-Semitism. I am sure the administration will do it. So to blame the administration for that, I think it's baseless.
But from Israel's perspective and from the perspective
we heard
of
also
Americans,
maybe in the aftermath of Valentine's Day, the president it's talking about bringing love to this country. We welcome that too, obviously.
Right. Well, let me ask you, though, because from the perspective of Israel, from the perspective of Jewish Americans, would it have been helpful to perhaps hear a more direct denunciation of anti-Semitism from the President of the United States?
The question, Elaine, is if actions will come. Statements, as important as they are much less important than actions, and I hope the administration will take the necessary actions in order to stop the anti-Semitic phenomenon in this country.
Mr. Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, says he was putting Iran on notice over possible violation of its nuclear deal. Has the departure of Michael Flynn in any way changed your confidence? You're shaking your head already,
Not at all.
You know what I'm going to ask about whether or not the president will enforce sufficiently the Iran deal.
Not at all. I think that that policy was made by the president. That policy was made by the president even when he was a candidate. Therefore, I don't think the national security advisors, as important as they may be, make the policies, the president's policy. And in that respect, Elaine, I think that maybe that is the most important thing that happened today. Today, for the first time in 8 years, Tehran understands that there is no daylight between Israel and the United States in the Iranian file. That is a strategic development. For 8 years, they could maneuver and play and manipulate in the broad daylight that existed between Israel and the previous administration in this country. That game is over. The Iranians understand it perfectly, and I believe it will have very strategic, important, beneficial implications.
So you're not concerned that perhaps the Prime Minister has lost a critical voice within the White House, an anti-Iranian voice within the Trump administration?
I am sure that the next national security advisor, whoever he or she is, will carry on the policy of the president that, as he said very explicitly, believes that Iran spreads terrorism, Iran shouldn't be allowed to acquire nuclear devices, and he will be very, very assertive in that sense. The next national security advisor will carry on with that policy, no doubt about it.
All right, Ambassador Dani Dayan, thank you so much
for stopping by.
Thank you, Elaine, for having me. Appreciate it.